I know I've done an earlier video of this, but here's another one. The brake booster is finally in. This is not the easiest job in the world, but it's definitely not the hardest. So, to recap what I've done, I removed the battery tray that sits here. There is four 13 millimeter bolts in it that hold it on. There is a 10 millimeter bolt that holds this on. So you've got two bolts that come in this way. A 13 millimeter is here, a 10 millimeter is here, two 13 millimeters here, one 13 millimeter there. You have the ABS pump that has to come out of there. This line here I disconnected simply because I dropped the transmission down. The plug has to come off back here for the TCM. The lines have to come off the master cylinder and the ABS. So this is the ABS, from the ABS to the brakes. Then the two that come from the master cylinder, which mounts there. The two come from the master cylinder over to the side of the ABS pump. I took the throttle body off. That gave me the access to be able to put this in. This has to come out sideways and go back in sideways, otherwise it will not go in. The bolts that hold the transmission mount up, they are E20s, which would be inverted Torx. You take these two completely out, start dropping this one down, then the whole transmission drops down enough to be able to get that guy out of there. The throttle body on this one, and probably all the other, I forget what the name of this engine is, multi-air, something like that. They're probably all exactly the same. So they are E30 Torx and 10 millimeter. Sorry, not E30, T30 Torx and 10 millimeter. The 10 millimeter bolts are on the backside. The T30 Torx are right here. This one on the back corner has a 10 millimeter nut on it and a stud that goes up under that, and it has a bracket. That bracket can be accessed. It is a big pain in the butt, but you can get to it with a swivel or even a straight socket and a 3-inch extension. You want to come in through here, push this line over, and you can gain access to it. Take it off completely, it's not needed. Don't know why it's even on there. 10 millimeter stud comes off. This whole throttle body literally pulls off. If you don't have a scanner, I probably wouldn't do this, because you see everything is disconnected. The throttle body is now disconnected. This shift cable here I took off. There's two 10 millimeter bolts there. This is 13 millimeter here. This is 10 millimeter. This is 10 millimeter. That way I could get into these two bolts that go here. All of these clip back on. Make sure to put your grounding strap on for your PCM. When plugging these back in, be very careful, because they have a tendency to break. I've done my fair share of those and had to replace my fair share of those. The back cover ends up pushing out on the bottom side of it, and you can't tighten it down anymore. Well, you can, but you have to use a pick. The air intake comes off because it's going to be in the way of getting all this off. There's a 10 millimeter bolt here, and if you've got an air box, it's going to be in this hole over here, which is probably Torx. He doesn't have the air box. He has a cheap AutoZone filter. The screw for the throttle body that holds the intake tube on was extremely loose on this, so it was able to just come right off. When putting this back together, you need to make sure to tighten everything as best you can, otherwise it's going to rattle loose. Oh, for the inside is completely done. The brake booster's mounted back up. I really wish I'd have thought about this before and scooted that seat all the way back, about 6 inches from being all the way back, and it would have been great to have that extra space. Anyways, all of these I used a 1/2 inch socket on, not the 13, which the 13 would work too, but the 1/2 inch fits pretty snug. Of course, it's wore out, so it would. When putting that clip back on, you might want to do that before pulling the bottom 2 nuts all the way through. There's I'm sure you can probably see it from the side here. That white clip there, the tab's pushed to the front of the vehicle to be able to unlock it. And it pretty much disconnects the brake pedal from the brake booster. When you go to take it off, you slide that connector down to be able to get it to come off, or after it's already loose, you can take it off, which is what I did. That bolt there has to come out for the steering intermediate shaft. When you put it back together, make sure it goes back exactly the same. I found out just a few minutes ago that it will go back on anyway. I'm pretty sure there is supposed to be a cutout on there to allow it to only go on one way, but not this one. When I initially put it on there, I had, not intentionally, but I had the bolt hole facing towards the gas pedal, whereas when I took it off, it's facing where it is now. After you take that off and take all of these bolts out, you can see one here, there's 4 of them up under there. Reassembly, you want to move that intermediate shaft into itself, push it over there to the gas pedal, and push it into the gas pedal, so it essentially locks it in place. Otherwise it's just going to keep getting in your way. Sorry, dog started barking. Putting it back together was fairly straightforward, more especially after fighting with it for hours to be able to get it out. I used a 36-inch extension just so I didn't have to keep getting up under there, and it worked out pretty good. The underside here, after you get all of the brake stuff connected, it may be best to leave this disconnected until you bleed this, or you could do it all together if you've got a scanner. I'm going to go ahead and put the ABS pump back in, connect all of my lines back up. Oh man, I didn't even realize my arm was in the way. I'm going to put the ABS pump back in, put the master cylinder back in, connect all of the lines, put this all back together, which looks like a nightmare to me, but this is what I do almost every single day. It's 12-volt wiring. Your ground, which is conveniently tucked away back here for some reason, needs to be capped out of the way temporarily. The hot is tucked off over here. Put your battery tray back in. Make sure this is all out of the way, just so you don't squish anything between the battery tray and the frame or the body, wherever the bolt is that you're putting in. Most of these plastic clips may not go back in, but try to get them all back in as best as possible. That way you don't have to worry about it falling apart. I mean, that's pretty much it. This is, let's see, it's 2:10 p.m. I started on this at 9 o'clock this morning, and I have not stopped yet. Well, aside from bouncing back and forth to put in clear coat on a front bumper and fender. But it's been constant on this the whole entire time, more especially from 11:30 on.